The first conversation in 5 years between Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky. Security guarantees from the United States of America for 50 years. But the absolutely unresolved issue of Donbas and the ceasefire during the referendum in Ukraine, this is how the latest results of the negotiations between Zelensky and Trump can be briefly described. And as Fox News reports today, following the negotiations, the first phone conversation in more than 5 years between the Ukrainian president and Vladimir Putin may take place in the near future. This is exactly the goal that Donald Trump allegedly set for himself, to appear as the most successful diplomat in the world. At the same time, after the negotiations, Zelensky is confident that Trump will support Ukraine if Putin lies again and does not accept the peace agreements. Trump also said he'd consider giving Ukraine security guarantees for 50 years instead of just 15. At the same time, the issue of Donbas remains unresolved, and Zelensky assures that the idea of a free economic zone is still being discussed, and there are no detailed visions on this matter yet. Meanwhile, Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov has already stated that supposedly Trump and Putin are both not supporting the European-Ukrainian proposal for a temporary ceasefire before a peaceful settlement of the war in Ukraine. And Moscow believes that Kyiv needs to urgently make a decision regarding Donbas. Nevertheless, please note that Donald Trump has not called Putin again after the talks in Mar-a-Lago, even though the Kremlin, let me remind you, insisted that such a call would definitely take place following the negotiations with Zelensky. Let's summarize together and discuss how the negotiation process will move forward, based on the statements we've already heard. After all, the Europeans are already planning to fly to Donald Trump in Washington in January to finalize all the documents. My name is Igor Alexeyevich. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave any comment under this episode, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pishi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So, the biggest news of this morning. Talks between United States President Donald Trump and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky may lead to more negotiations. The first phone conversation in more than 5 years between Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. This was reported by a well-informed White House source to Fox News. According to him, organizing direct phone talks between the leaders of the two warring countries would be a diplomatic victory for the American president. Quote, Trump appears to be the most effective mediator since both Putin and Zelensky perceive each other emotionally, which challenges Trump. Next, this source recalled that the Russian and Ukrainian presidents have not spoken since July 2020, when Kyiv carried out an operation against Wagner private military company mercenaries, luring them to Belarus. At the same time, according to Fox News, Zelensky has repeatedly tried to arrange a phone conversation with Putin, but the latter has always refused. And then further, it's funny that, according to Fox News, the White House is convinced that there was supposedly a chance for direct talks between Putin and Zelensky in August and September 2024, but then Ukraine invaded the Kursk region and Putin changed his mind about talking to Zelensky. I'm giving you this information so you understand the level of bias on Fox News. Recently, on December 28, Zelensky met Trump in person for the third time. Earlier, the White House chief called Putin and spoke with him for 2 hours. Despite this, the United States president called the meeting with the Ukrainian president amazing. And according to him, agreement has been reached on 95 issues of the peace plan. However, the problem of Donbas still remains unresolved as Putin demands the withdrawal of all Ukrainian troops from the region. But Zelensky, of course, does not agree to this. Donald Trump also claimed Russia would help rebuild Ukraine. And next, I'll give you a truly astonishing quote from Donald Trump. Russia wants Ukraine to succeed. It sounds a bit strange. Putin is very generous in wanting Ukraine to recover, and he is ready to supply cheap electricity. Well, I don't know how to react to such a statement from Donald Trump. Well, that's just nonsense. I mean, Putin attacks Ukraine so that Ukraine can succeed. Well, I don't know. That's complete nonsense. In addition, Trump noted that he understands Putin's position, who does not want a ceasefire during the referendum in Ukraine. Quote, That's what he thinks. They're conducting military operations. Then they'll have to stop and then maybe start again. He wants to avoid that situation. I understand his position, but as for negotiations between Zelensky and Putin, then in Moscow. Moscow states that right now there is no talk of a phone conversation between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the bold Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. But Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov added that a phone conversation between Putin and Trump will still take place sometime in the near future. Although I would like to remind you that yesterday, during the talks between Trump and Zelensky, the Kremlin was shouting at the top of their lungs that Trump would immediately call Putin as soon as he finished his conversation with Zelensky, but apparently there is simply nothing to talk about. Why is that? Yes, because, as Zelensky himself clarified, the prepared 20-point document is about 90% ready and two key points remain unresolved. Quote, "These are the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, how it will operate, and the issue of territories. These are the two questions that remain in the 20-point document." Zelensky said the document can't be finalized yet because there are no agreements on these points. At the same time, the president emphasized that the issue of security guarantees has already been fully agreed upon. And here some very interesting and curious information has emerged. As it became known yesterday, Zelensky proposed to Donald Trump to consider providing Ukraine with long-term security guarantees for a period of 30 to 50 years instead of 15. Ukraine's president said Trump promised to consider the proposal. He also noted that Ukraine will definitely receive security guarantees from the United States for a period of 15 years. In other words, this is no longer up for discussion. 15 years is constant. But now there's the question that Trump might extend this period to 30, 40, or even 50 years. Moreover, Ukraine appeals to the fact that if Trump gets along so well with Vladimir Putin, as Trump likes to boast, if Trump is so sure that Putin isn't lying and really wants to stop the war and not attack Ukraine anymore, then why not give Ukraine guarantees for 50 years since they won't be needed anyway? If Trump says he believes Putin and that Putin wants peace, then my God, let's give guarantees for even 100 years. You're sure that Putin won't start a war again. As for Donbas, for now it's not about creating a demilitarized zone, but they're still discussing a free economic zone. And it's all written in water with a pitchfork. According to Zelensky, there is already a clear understanding of how the ceasefire monitoring should look, and it will be ensured by Ukraine's partners. At the same time, the question of who exactly will control the possible so-called demilitarized free zone in Donbas has not yet been worked out. And he said that for now it's only about a free economic zone. Nevertheless, it's important to note that there is still no detailed concept of a free economic zone in Donbas either. But as Zelensky says, when it appears, it will be discussed with the public. In short, nothing has been fully decided there yet, and it's obvious why, because Putin is being stubborn and shouting no, demanding that the Ukrainian armed forces completely leave these territories. Next, I'll quote Zelensky. As for withdrawing from Donbas, look, it's not news that the Russians want this. In their rosy dreams, they wish we didn't exist at all on the territory of our entire country, and these dreams are not new. But we have our own land, state, territorial integrity, and interests. We will act according to the interests of Ukraine. What happens next? Today, French President Emmanuel Macron answered the question both directly and indirectly. The President of France said progress has been made on security guarantees for Ukraine. According to him, in January, the contribution of each country in the coalition of the Resolute will be determined. And let me remind you, there are 30 of them. And after that, the Europeans, together with Zelensky, will arrive in Washington for a meeting with Trump to finalize all the agreements. But Macron also revealed an interesting detail. It turns out that yesterday, after talking with the Europeans, Trump and Zelensky also spent some time talking one-on-one. Let me remind you, the format was delegations talking for 2 hours and 40 minutes, then about an hour speaking with the Europeans by video call. And after that, Trump stayed with Zelensky for some more time. They talked one-on-one about something, and then they went out to the press conference, which, by the way, we discussed with you yesterday on this YouTube channel. If you happen to miss it, be sure to watch it, because, well, it looked pretty optimistic. At least Trump didn't start criticizing Zelensky. And after that, Zelensky announced that the Europeans would arrive in Washington in January. And when a common position is agreed upon regarding security guarantees, peace in Ukraine, and so on, then Ukraine will be ready for contacts with the Russians. Unless Putin chickens out like he always does when it's time to meet, and he will. That's just who Vladimir Putin is. In May, he was saying, let's meet, but then backed out and didn't show up. In the end, Zelensky stated that the United States is ready to support Ukraine if Russia refuses a peace agreement and continues the war. Quote, peace is the only option. We and the Americans believe that we have a single position here. The war must be ended diplomatically and Russia needs to be pressured. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Friends, if you found this episode interesting and useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or a paid sponsorship subscription using the links and details provided. The video description clearly states, support the Alexei Pechi channel. Various platforms are available: Patreon, Buy Me Coffee, PayPal, bank info, and crypto wallets. So choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.